A very good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us here on the Citizens Chat Show, streaming on YouTube at Civic Space TV. Always a pleasure to have you join us. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to our channel and follow us for this and so much more. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host, and today we are talking about the chaotic send-off that characterized the late Honorable Mohammed Ssegirinya send-off on Sunday, and the new twist in Dr. Kizza Besigye and his colleague Lutale's case. It is my pleasure to welcome my guest to the show. From my immediate left is Ambassador Simon Mulongo, security expert and former member of parliament for Bubulo East County. Good afternoon, Ambassador.
And good day to you, our good viewers. And it's nice having, again, one more time with Judith and colleagues.
Thank you very much. Next to Ambassador, of course, is Dr. Sarah Bireete, the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Fearless, bold, name her anything. Good afternoon, Dr. Sarah, and welcome to the show.
Judith, that's a setup.
No, it's not.
How you have introduced me.
But it's that is how you are known.
It's a setup. Anyway, I try to do my bit as a contribution to nation building. Yeah, and I know sometimes I step on expensive, drinks, table with expensive drinks.
You shake them.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I set out to do as an activist. So, good afternoon, viewers. Glad to be back.
Is that nation building similar to Henry Barlow's nation building?
It depends on what you mean. So my nation building is in the context of Uganda, but well-meaning with the global principles of nation building.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. I see my good friend waiting to say something, Mr. Joseph Ochieno. He is a political commentator in UPC Idiologue. Very good to have you, Joseph. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Absolute pleasure. I can see fantastically red. That cup is beautiful.
Thank you.
The table has expensive drinks.
Fantastic. And for Sarah's introduction, all I can say is amen. And as a matter of interest, having said amen to Sarah's introduction, Simon is also an NRM. So for the avoidance of doubt, this panel is substantially well represented.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joseph. Last but not least, of course, is Counsel Byamugisha, who is a lawyer and politician. And you always see Moses smartly dressed in a suit. He is very smart today. Not in a suit, but he has a very good reason as to why he is like this. But I'm also happy to see you in something other than a suit and a tie. Good to have you on the show, Moses.
Thank you very much, fellow panelists. Thank you very much, viewers. It's a pleasure to be here, and Happy New Year.
What has your day been like before we go into this serious conversation?
The day started well, but the news of the arrest of activists at the Supreme Court, while they attempted to deliver a petition to the Chief Justice Ochieno, is very, very disheartening.
Yes. I can imagine. Well, so just a quick introduction about our topic. The late Mohammed Ssegirinya, who until his death on Thursday last week was the Member of Parliament for Kawempe North constituency, was on Sunday laid to rest at his ancestral village in the constituency of Nyendo Mukungwe in Masaka City. The burial, however, was marred by chaotic scenes which greatly undermined the dignified send-off that any human being deserves. There was contestation on where exactly the funeral ceremony should be held. The National Unity Platform party, to which the late Ssegirinya belonged, took charge of the body, according to news reports that we've watched, and insisted on having the funeral at the home of the deceased, which had become quite small to accommodate a large number of mourners. Another group, led by Matthias Mpuga, the area MP, who also fell out recently with the NUP over the 500 million shilling service award he received from Parliament, converged at a nearby playground to bid farewell to Ssegirinya. At the deceased's home, it is also reported that the NUP blocked Ssegirinyas mother from accessing the playground where Mpuga and the others were gathered. But later we've seen the leader of opposition in Parliament, Joel Senyonyi, instead putting blame of the chaos on a lack of information and joint coordination by Parliament. We shall talk more about the Besigye situation later, but just to give us a refresher or a little bit of background to what exactly we're talking about. I think a lot of us have watched the news. I don't know how many of you watched the news or did not watch. But it is quite dramatic. If you go on YouTube, there are very dramatic and chaotic scenes that are quite shocking. And I'll just pick your quick thoughts about what you saw or what you've read or what you've heard, starting with you, Ambassador.
To tell you the truth, I have not watched the clip about the body of the late Honorable Ssegirinya because I have not been giving it much attention. But I've had in the corridors people commenting on how the body was mismanaged, disorganized, and chaotic. And to me, this is, I wish I was free to say that it was to do with the immature politicking, but because I'm a diplomat, I can't say such things. But I would say that the NUP suffers from serious disorganization, lack of seriousness, and mismanagement of affairs. So it is just a refraction and a reflection of what the internal dynamics of the NUP party is being reflected on the ground. So to me, it characterized the total negative perspectives of what NUP is supposed to be viewed like. So it is so unfortunate because if you cannot respect the dead, if you cannot respect the mother to the late, then why should you be respected? So to me, it's a very bad score on them because that was not necessary. That was a constituency of the Honorable Mpuga, and the Honorable Kyagulanyi was coming in to send off, to pay last respect to a gentleman who comes from a constituency of Honorable Mpuga. So it was very necessary that there is coordination because anyone who would have gone there, whether you're from whichever party, they would have had some kind of coordination. But anyway, to me, that can be said to be the last elements of the pains of separation between the Honorable Mpuga and from the party of NUP. So that, unfortunately, got refracted and reflected on the burial ceremony of the late Honorable Ssegirinya. Very, very unfortunate indeed.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah.
Well, there are three parties to what happened in that send-off of Honorable Ssegirinya. One is Parliament, and I want to apportion the first blame to the institution of Parliament. Parliament, in their retirement and benefits amendments, passed a provision for burial of sitting MPs. And as such, Honorable Ssegirinya was entitled by law to that send-off or official burial by the institution of Parliament. Why do I apportion the first blame to Parliament? It's common knowledge that Honorable Mathias Mpuga fell out with his former party. I don't know whether he's still a party member, the National Unity Platform. So the emotional intelligence would have demanded that Parliament as an institution, whose duty it was to prepare a dignified send-off of their MP, avoids falling into the hands of that conflict because they know the conflict. So my first blame, I think 50% of the blame, I blame the institution of Parliament for lack of emotional intelligence, for their carelessness to that extent. Because for me, all three parties were wrong. All, Parliament, Honorable Mathias Mpuga, and the NUP, all of them were wrong. Why do I say so? a burial function is a family business. By association, Honorable Ssegirinya was a member of NUP, but he has a family. He has a clan. Tomorrow he can leave NUP, but he will remain who he is. His parents will remain. His siblings will remain. So in my view, both parties underlooked the family of Honorable Ssegirinya. If Parliament, the institution that I blame 50%, had used emotional intelligence, they should have organized this official burial with the family of Honorable Ssegirinya. Everybody else should have come to this burial as a guest of the family. So the two parties with the conflict, that is Nupa and Honorable Mpuga, failed to respect the family and rode on the ferry of Parliament to manage the official send-off of their member, causing a chaos, a mockery of, the last rites, the last celebration of Honorable Ssegirinya. It was very unfortunate.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah, for your views. Let me move to you, Mr. Joseph Ochieno. Your thoughts?
I was at Ssegirinya vigil in Kasanga
At the home, his home.
at the home, yes, the constitutional home, and I chose to go there deliberately and I'm pleased I did go in solidarity, primarily with the family, notwithstanding everything else that is being said and that has been said. I saw what was going there, what was going on. Clearly, distraught family, clearly some very angry members, clearly Simon, an absolutely charged up community, starting from basically miles towards the home that evening. But definitely a space that needed clarity of leadership from someone at that material time. Going to Masaka, Sarah is right that the lead employer, in this case, away from the constituents who elected Ssegirinya, was Parliament. And being what it is as a noble, decent institution and organization, you'd expect them to really necessarily have provided the lead. Now, briefly, Judith, I was the director of the burial arrangements for Dr. Bote. And once we left South Africa via Zambia up to here, up to the state functions of Parliament, actually media deliberately directed because I know there are certain things and certain people who basically want to make good use of the situation to make interesting visits to Akoko. And the clear position was this, that this was a matter for the family and the party. The party helping the family to do the needful. And it was a fantastic event down there in Akoko. I told a different media house 2 days ago about this very particular issue, that looking back to some of the funerals I've been attending and looking at how politics plays there, I am suggesting that we need to persuade the church and persuade politicians that, particularly this being an election charade year, that really when people pass, there's something dirty that I see taking place, that bereaved family members are arraigned at 10 o'clock in the morning, fully dressed. They would not have slept for the last 5, 7, 8 days, and they're arraigned down there and they sit like this. And not even politicians, but people in politics begin to make speeches until 4:30. And at that stage, by the time they're introducing family members, they begin to call children, grandchildren, quickly, 1 minute, kind of stuff. That is nasty, dirty. I'm campaigning around that. These things must stop. Some churches have intervened, but I think even part of the intervention, because some of these days, some of them also have major conflicts. no, families ideally should be able to lead in this. I want to agree with Simon without picking up any sentiments, that quite clearly politically, Parliament and NUP, a leading member has done. The most obvious commonsensical thing to do was to go to the family, establish what is going on, who is the leader, who is the coordinator, what is happening, what's the environment, what are the needs and what are the necessities, including NUP in its position to push, in this case, Parliament. Of course, Parliament.
What was then organizing committee by the family?
I genuinely, I don't know. You see what I'm saying? And it would appear possibly not. And at that stage, you give direction, you give leadership, and you provide direction, including this 24-hour on the start, instant media, where there is X, where there are people who know how to challenge NUP people, including commanders of the army. Meaning, you issue a press statement. The news is now there. This is what's going to happen within the next 1 hour. This is what's going to happen, and this is what is expected. This is what the family has agreed, and this is what we've agreed with the family. And you lead. That was clearly absent. So, political leadership in this country is massively wanting, and I think it portrayed itself in down there. Political opportunism at the peak was there, and it becomes extremely nasty in a situation and environment in which a family has lost a loved one. Let alone the fact that, in this case, Ssegirinya, notwithstanding everything else, is somebody who, by the time he had died, the family had substantially struggled with family. So, very sad. I can tell you guys, there is no circumstance in which such a thing would happen in a funeral, a UPC-related funeral, even at an LCT-related.
Thank you, Joseph. Moses, Counsel, let's hear from you as well.
Thank you very much, colleagues. The Political Parties and Organizations Act, amongst other provisions, provides for the privileges a political party and political party leaders should enjoy. Those privileges include being able to go out there, open party branches, sell party cards, mobilize people, conduct meetings, hold rallies, elect party structures, and all of the related stuff. Unfortunately, because we are operating in an environment where political parties have not been allowed to function normally, where it is not possible to have a meaningful meeting anywhere, where a leader cannot successfully hold a meeting with party members without disturbance. Political parties and leaders are resorting to such gatherings to take advantage of such gatherings, to be able to reach out to people, pass on a message, and perhaps perform some of the functions that ordinarily they cannot do without the disturbance of police. And so the whole process of the send of the Honorable Ssegirinya, and of course eventually the function that happened in Masaka, suffered the same fate. You had the NUP, and I'm not saying this because it's the only reason, but I'm simply trying to bring in a different angle from what my colleagues have brought in. They have already exhausted that. And I'm trying to show you also another angle that influence the character and decision making that was happening out there. So you've got leaders, you've got a party that ordinarily cannot hold those activities in Masaka without disturbance. And they're like, this is the opportunity we have. This is the opportunity we have to go out there on the grassroots and be able to talk to people for 4 hours without tear gas, without being dispersed. Good thing, this value is bringing everyone, including those who are not necessarily NUP members. Perhaps if we had called a rally for NUP, it's only NUP members who would have come. But this is an activity that is bringing even non-NUP members, it's an opportunity for us to reach out to them and talk to them. And so, it's going to be very important for us that we are in charge of the program, that we are in charge of the master of ceremonies, that we know who is going to speak. We should actually see amongst ourselves and know who is going to speak what, because at the end of the day, we want this message to reach out to the people. I'm simply trying to put myself in the shoes and the minds of these guys to try and understand what was influencing them. And so, as they are planning that, they reach on the ground and wait a minute. The person who has been given the power, look, Comrade Sarah talked about the Act of Parliament that explains how a sitting member of Parliament is sent off. That act also actually establishes the committee that is in charge of such ceremonies. So ordinarily you would have expected the ceremony in Masaka, that committee, I think the Babaranda committee, I may be educated by my colleagues here who are more knowledgeable about it, but we would have expected the Babaranda committee to be in charge of the Masaka ceremony. But what do we see? We find the Honorable Mpuga in charge. And like my colleagues said, whom we all know that he recently fell out with NUP. That alone, all the other factors constant, that alone builds tension. Because it brings in an element of unhealthy competition. Remember, I've already told you, we are entering into an election season. We are a political party that wants audience. You also have someone here who wants audience with the people. He's actually also in his constituents. And so he thinks this is an opportunity actually for him to gather many people. Lately, it's not easy to organize a rally of 500 people without parting with a lot of money. But these are people that are already mobilized. So really, to be in charge of a function, I'm looking at the side of Mpuga now, to be in charge of a function where you expect thousands of people, who 80% of them are actually your voters, it would be very nice to be in charge of it. So you're going to build, you're going to put up a show and put a force to ensure that you're in charge of that function. So to conclude this, we need to reflect back and demand that political parties be freed to operate normally. My thinking is that if the National Unity Platform had enough privilege and leverage to operate normally, it could have even organized special players, even back in Masaka, without necessarily waiting for the burial, and things would have been fine. But I'm so sure that within these days, if they had attempted to go to Masaka to conduct like a vigil as a political party at the home, that vigil would have been dispersed. Yes.
Thank you. And that's quite an interesting perspective, the shrinking space for political parties, opposition political parties are that to engage.
Yes.
But in a way, it also, I feel like it also lends credence to what Joseph had actually said earlier, the rise of political populism, where we are seeing people basically taking advantage of funerals to actually advance their political interests and agenda at the expense of the grief and the bereavement that the families are going through. And one just wonders, we understand politicians have to advance their ideologies, but to what end then? Does it therefore mean that political interests or individual interests for that become more important than commiserating with a grieving family? Just a question that's just running through my mind. Joseph wanted to say something, then I get back to you one more time.
No, I totally agree. But I just want to say something that I appreciate, and my party has been at the helm of fighting to reclaim the space and the frustrations. And Moses has quite clearly defined it. Can you imagine the provisions for the political parties and organizations, legislations that had been locked? So imagine in their absence how locked we were. So people like the Cecilia Gwalz-Etala, those people operated in funerals because those are the opportunities, funerals and weddings and nothing else. That said though, Notwithstanding all these, I have attended a few funerals in recent times. I think it would be irresponsible for me not to emphasize the point about leadership and organization and decency and pinning the organizations and agencies that we so did, taking into account everything else down there. In fact, for those of us here, and for really particularly for the predominant majority of our young audiences who would be watching and would have watched these things, actually possibly what they don't want to see is necessarily because you are there and you're in charge, but how organized you are and in charge. So it's also partial PR. In the last 2 months, I have participated in 3 major funerals, all of which for party UPC party members. But all of them were successfully, of course, not necessarily the dynamics here. We've got Kyagulanyi and Puga family, and then some other issues. Some have even pushed the state. It is not difficult to say that we're a political party, and this is really a burden of responsibility for us political parties, and I don't really want our names to be spoiled. And I'm persuading my colleagues in other political parties, and even UPC leaders in the future, that look, death has occurred. It's your job to engage, with the families, to consider and take note of protocol, to balance and do these things side by side with the church. I attended a burial of a major head teacher in Arua, and it was a big thing in Arua Cathedral the other day. One of the big national head teachers of the past. Big things. UPC worked side by side with the family, and I was the official representative of the family. And when the casket was coming, I was being pushed to go immediately in front of the casket. And I said no, I pushed back, and I said no, it has to be the family. Interestingly, it was one of the family members pushing me at the front. And I said no, and I made sure the widow and everyone else, and we came second. We still did what was necessary, and at the end of the day, it was an impressive send-off to the person. And overall, people simply said, look, this guy is great, the department was the most important, the family is this, and yes, these UPC guys, yes, they're a party and they supported the family in the process. And I think
just like what Dr. Sarah was saying, a funeral it's a family thing, really, ideally, and it should be the family taking charge.
The biggest confusion came from the absence of the organizing committee.
Yes.
So if the organizing committee had been announced after the passing of Honorable Ssegirinya, this organizing committee would have included the party. Like in normal circumstances, you find the party is represented. It would have included senior elders in Ssegirinya family, or a contact person from the family. So Parliament would then come and work with the organizing committee. In the absence of the organizing committee, because this was a vulnerable family, so in the absence of the committee, Parliament, the organizing committee of Parliament, which is technical staff, not politicians, should have then asked the family, can you give us your contact people? Who do we work with?
They know protocol and all
these people were at Parliament. How did they go to Parliament? Those people who coordinated that process. Then the clerk responsible for this arrangement should have said, maybe give me 4 people I can coordinate with. Then it would be the choice of Ssegirinya family as to who is on that committee with Parliament. In that case, then you wouldn't see the fallout of Nupu, we are doing this, attempts to kidnap the body, the mother is left alone, the sisters are on one side with the children.
I'm so sorry, Sarah.
I'm so sorry. It was so absurd.
Sarah, I'm so sorry. Apparently, I'm really sorry, guys. The children did not send off there.
No.
Yeah, because some of them had to go to the other.
Apparently. No.
And the widow, the other one widow was the other side. Those are the people who lost their loved ones. Those are the primary stakeholders in the funeral. Not the people who were making long speeches. The people who made wrong speeches are back in their families.
Yeah.
It's these orphans suffering with their mothers and grandmother.
So there is also an argument that I think I've been reading where they said in Ssegirinya will, he had actually said he wouldn't mind if Bobi Wine was the lone speaker at his funeral.
Yes.
And so do you think that could have also justified perhaps?
I'm sure the family wanted to respect the wishes of the deceased. So the people that the family would have appointed, it would have been their duty to draw the program, even in a state funeral. And there was a lot of misinformation. How did you declare a state funeral? I watched part of that, and I'm like, is this ignorance? Or it's deliberate misinformation? We were all commenting, even on social media.
Yeah.
The body of MPs is on the budget. We are like, are these people planning to die or what? It was public debate. So why did they kill our person and declare a state funeral? It wasn't a state funeral. It was an official funeral. And Ssegirinya was entitled as a sitting MP. So it wasn't a state funeral. There was a lot of that misinformation.
And then finally, if you don't mind, on Mpuga being the area member of parliament, area member of parliament, you basically merely host.
No. When there is a conflict, Joseph, in this case, there is a conflict between Honorable Mpuga and Noob. So these people, both of them should have attended as guests.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
And they could all speak. Because I don't think anybody should have been excluded. So you make a program where you have remarks by area MP who was close to the family. You have remarks by Nupu leaders, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And everybody speaks, and you have never seen 2 funerals.
District chairperson can lead organizing.
Yeah.
Area member of parliament is an enabler there.
Yes.
Nothing else.
LC1,
Yes.
LC2, LC5, all these dignitaries should have spoken.
Thank you.
It was finished because I wanted to.
Yeah. We'll get back to him.
Yes. What I understood somehow was that Parliament organized and put in place team to work with the family.
Who was on this team?
And of course, it was on the side of Mpuga. Why? Because of protests and unruliness, so to say, by the Nup people who did not want Parliament being seen as government, and government is the one who had caused the death or a direct hand in the death, so they did not want to associate the funeral process with Parliament. So the team that was put in place by Parliament and which worked with the family got defeated by the Nup people. So on the ground, the family knew who was organizing and doing what. So when the Nup arrived, after they took the body to the Nup headquarters, and when the body went down there, they took charge of it to the extent that they wrestled the whole arrangement from the team that had been put in place by Parliament and family. And because the family wanted to go to the side of Honorable Mpuga's side, or Parliament, these people just blocked the other group, took charge of the body, and they forced the mother to be on the side of Nup. So she sat there quietly and sobbing. So I think the whole thing is the painful divorce of the group of Honorable Mpuga and that of the main Nup was now being played out to the funeral at the expense and suffering of the family. Because as you said rightly, it is the family that was supposed to take charge of the things. The committee that was supposed to be working on this could have been left to do it with the family, and then the rest are just but either guests or yes. But as the Counsel Moses put it, people wanted to position themselves to make political capital out of this. To them, it was an opportunity to exploit and demonstrate that closer to the late, to win sympathy, and also to have an opportunity to address the freely available audience. And that, I think, caused the problem. And in the end, we have this kind of saga.
And it's so embarrassing to not just the community, but not only, even to the country. It reflects very negatively to the country that we are so disorganized to the extent that we could not even manage to have a peaceful send-off of somebody like the late Honorable Ssegirinya.
Thank you. Moses, let me come back to you.
Yes. I just wanted to add, and I know it has been touched, but at the heart of all this confusion, if we are to list factors that caused this confusion in their order of priority, the biggest factor is the involvement or the perceived involvement or role of the state in Ssegirinya, case, how he got sick and his eventual death. That factor influenced decisions and the character and the conduct, especially of NUP members. You know, this is not the only burial that the funeral we have seen of a politician. Politicians have passed on, but there is not much drama. But why this one had a lot of drama, and politicians have passed on, even within NUP. NUP lost the vice president of Western Uganda. But at her burial, there was peace. There was order. People gave speeches. And actually I want to on that point, want to downplay, respectfully, downplay the arguments that are intended to characterize NUP as violent, as anything, unruly. It's not true. NUP lost its vice president not long ago, and she was buried in a well-organized and peaceful ceremony, which was attended by not only NUP members, but also the rest of party members, and NRM and even government leaders attended that funeral. But why this funeral was unique was because of what the public thinks the state's role was in the death of Ssegirinya. And it reminds me, in our early days as FDC, we lost our party chairman, Haj Sulaiman Chugundu, a very good man from Butambara. I had the privilege to visit Sulaiman Chugundu in Kororo. When he was so weak, he had just returned from South Africa, but he was so weak. You could see a man that is really going down. We had a chat. The public strongly believed that the government had a role in the death of Sulaiman Chugundu, especially relating it with the troubles he went through when Greenland Bank was taken away and the financial crisis he found himself through and his business crumbling. The public believed that he had been targeted as an opposition leader, and his businesses had been targeted. So because of the anger that we had that time, when we went to Chibuli Mosque, where they were playing for him, Apollon Nsibambi came on behalf of government, and I don't know, I think he was a prime minister then, I don't remember, but he's the one who represented government on that ceremony. Everything was fine until the moment they said Nsibambi is now coming to give a speech. We said, wait a minute. Giving a speech as a friend or as a government representative? They said as a government representative, he has his envelope and what have you. We said no, he will not speak. And we said he will not speak. And indeed, we caused a scene in Nsibambi, and you know, a very polite man, he already had the microphone. He pleaded, we said, no, sir, if you are going to speak on behalf of government, you will not speak here. So Zimbabwe, with all his team of government, did not speak. Because of that anger that we had. And we had no other way to communicate to government how angry and painful we feel on how we are being treated, on how our leader had been treated, on how we had no other way except to shut them down at the funeral, which we did. And we have no regrets up to today. So,
Finish then.
yes, so I can really understand the frustration that Noop had. And as like I said earlier, as I conclude, please, do not, the public, do not fall for the arguments that Noop is unruly, is and what. Like I've told you, we have seen other funerals that Noop has organized, has attended, where even government officials have had, but because they do not have any questions like the involvement of the state in the late life, those have been painful. But because now the Noop felt that the state was trying to take advantage, and you bring Mpuga and make him the head, the Noop felt that the state was really trying to drill further to show them and prove a point, which Noop was not willing to take down.
I hear you, Moses, and thanks for reminding us of that Shugundu story. But there are slight differences with this case. So Unsubambi, maybe he was a Minister of Public Service before becoming Prime Minister or whatever, was a member of executive.
The late Apollo, the former Prime Minister?
The former Prime Minister was a member of executive. But in this case, we are talking of one arm of government, which is Parliament. The arm that has paid majority of Honorable Ssegirinyas bills, medical bills. The arm that Honorable Ssegirinya was a member. The arm where Noop is a member and serving amongst the top executive as leader of opposition. So we are not talking of the executive here. That's the parallel I want to draw. This arm is no stranger to Ssegirinya and his affairs. The same arm condemned the unfair treatment of Ssegirinya in custody. We would see the few times they debated why they were not getting bail, their welfare, the arm was real on the side of Ssegirinya. So they are not a tormentor. As Parliament, they are not a tormentor of Honorable Ssegirinya. The whole country was really angry at the executive and the judiciary, especially the judiciary. Whether in connivance with the executive or not, the judiciary in Uganda failed Ssegirinya. The judiciary in Uganda contributed to the death of Ssegirinya because of the way he was treated. Where the executive comes in, when Honorable Ssegirinya was first granted bail, the military, as usual, will behave like hooligans. Brutally rearrested both Honorable Ssewanya and Ssegirinya as they were getting out of prison, and rearrested them when the first time they were given bail. So that's where the executive comes in with their hooliganism and brutality, especially the military, because it's the one which rearrested them. Then from there, either the judiciary was intimidated or not, that's not an excuse. Judicial power is derived from the people, not the executive. So we join Noop, we join the family of Ssegirinya in condemning the judiciary and the military and the torture of Ssegirinya in custody, where his feet and whatever, where I've seen pictures or really disheartening pictures of his alleged private parts. We condemn all of that, and that's the executive. But it's not Parliament. So I think it's important for the viewers to separate these two. Parliament made a mistake by failing to use their emotional intelligence on how to manage the burial of Honorable Ssegirinya, who is a member of Noop, but where there is a glaring conflict and fallout between Noop and Honorable Mpuga. That was their mistake, and they should shoulder the blame.
I want to come to you, Ambassador. I have a question for you as well. Moses here raises also a critical issue, which is the erosion of trust generally that Ugandans have towards the government or the establishment, so to speak. On the NRM's 10-point program, top on that list, the first thing there is democracy, okay? And ideally, in a democratic society, we should be seeing institutions that function, just like Dr. Sarah is saying here. She cites the judiciary and faults the judiciary, just like a lot of Ugandans. The spotlight is on the judiciary for failing Ssegirinya and so many other Ugandans who perhaps may not have the kind of clout or fame that others do have, okay? When you sit as a party, do you actually reflect on these things and realize that there are a lot of weaknesses and many ways that through which you're actually failing Ugandans? Or do you feel that you're actually doing a very good job and you should actually, no one should find fault?
I think you're just over-amplifying and flogging a question that is so
Obvious.
selective and, and leading. The issue is, if you want to know the test of a gentleman, give him space and opportunity. And then you know whether that person conducts himself or herself as a gentleman or a lady or not. The circumstances that were in Masaka were to do with the people who others are describing as non-violent, peaceful. But until they were given that space, that they showed their true colors of being violent. And they have not been violent in Masaka alone, but elsewhere. And not once, not twice, not 10 times, but very many times. So that's one. Secondly, if it was FDC disorganizing because they had reservations and resentment against the government led by NRM, you cannot blame it on government. Because you can't say, me as FDC, I'm angry, I'm going to cause trouble, and you think that that should now be switched to government. That means even what Satan does on earth should be blamed on God. Yeah, satanic things are done on earth, people kill, steal, rape, do what? But you cannot say you're blaming God on it, because each party has their own responsibilities. If an organization, a political party cannot organize and manage its affairs internally, you should not shoulder the responsibility to the other. And I think here NRM should carry its own cross. NRM has not gone to that funeral and disorganized anyone. What was there, and I like Dr. Bireete's point very, very seriously, that it was not to do with the NRM party. It was to do with the parliament, the institution to which the Honorable Ssegirinya belonged, to which all of them actually belonged or once were there. So really they should have allowed it to take charge, because they dismissed the effort by parliament, rejected it simply because they had fallen out with the Honorable Mpuga, so they did not want to do anything with the Honorable Mpuga's side, because they impuganized the parliament's efforts to do their part. So I think that for the NRM has put in place the space for all the things to happen. They even provided security for the burial to take place peacefully. They even provided a band for the...
Parliament band.
Parliament does not have its own police band. It doesn't have a police band.
There's a police post.
The police post is there. It does not have capacity to do the work that required the manpower that was needed on the ground.
So NRM Secretariat did it?
So the NRM
let's allow someone to explain, to respond, and then we'll have you people
was
come.
formed by the NRM, that the mighty NRM that was overwhelmingly elected by the people of this country. So whether it is whatever the organs, structures, and so on, issues, when you're in power, you take charge. Look at the Trump administration that is coming in. They're shaking so many people because many people have to pack their bags to leave as they're getting replaced by the regime of President Trump in America. So in this case, yes, it is. This is the government that was formed by the NRM. And I want to say that the space that has been put there, like in Masaka, was supposed to allow the family and parliament or the leadership as it organized to carry out the arrangement of the burial of the late Ssegirinya peacefully. But these poor overwhelmed, they even chased away the police. They even beat them up and even dragged the mother violently. These are people who are said to be peaceful, violently pushing a lady who had not eaten for days. She's been mourning. The one who was lying there in the hospital trying to take care of the Honorable Ssegirinya, weak, hungry, and desperate because she had lost the son. How they pushed her violently. We cannot describe this as peaceful people. So I think that if you want to demonstrate how somebody is peaceful, give somebody a chance and you see how peaceful they are. So yes, ma'am, I look in your eyes and say, the government provided the atmosphere freely, provided security. Yes, it was free. And they provided security to ensure that the family, the mourners, do not have these interruptions until some group arraigned and took charge and actually snatched away violently the responsibility and disorganized everything and calling it reorganizing it. Okay, and imagine, how could you even see children of Ssegirinya, widows of Ssegirinya, parents of Ssegirinya, the clan of Ssegirinya being left out of the main activity of the burial until they even put the body into the grave? Can you just imagine that? What
so
kind
let's also talk about the environment that, say, the government provided.
Yes.
During his times when he was alive, from the time the political environment, let's talk about that.
Well, we can, because I saw Dr. Sarah blaming Judiciary. I know they're not here to defend themselves. Blaming the military, they're not here to defend themselves. I wish we invited them, well knowing that we're going to put them on the spot. But what I know is that there are different times and the roles that happen in the life of the Honorable Ssegirinya. The circumstances under which he was arrested, the suspicions which came at the heels of the Bijambia machete wielding and killing and cutting of people in the region of Buganda, particularly in the south central Buganda. It was so bad that people were left mourning and wondering whether government was in this country. And the government did investigations. And in the investigations, they tumbled on what they believed was evidence. And this evidence was that there are some masterminders. And of course, they were named to be the two honorable members plus others that were said to have led this. So really, the government was playing its constitutional obligation of ensuring that there is peace and security to the community. If you were in Masaka, Chazanga, wherever it was, Nyendo, and all these places, and you did not know whether you would spend the next night alive or next morning alive, you would know what I'm talking about. People really were disturbed. Murders, day in, day out. So many people lost lives. And of course, after the arrest of these two people, the whole thing ended. I'm not saying there is evidence, I have evidence linked, or I don't have evidence linked. I don't know that. I was not even in the country. But the point is that the government came up with strong statements and fingers pointing at those they felt were suspects. And indeed, government will say, if government was to argue, that after the arrest, the Bijambias ended. So whether they were involved or not, I don't know. But at least the Bijambia ended. That's one. Secondly, you see, prosecuting activities that are supposed to end crime, especially crime that is involving so many people's lives being lost, it is not a mean activity. And if you saw by the Constitution to protect and protect the population and their properties, really you have to go an extra mile to ensure that you arrest the situation. So in that case, I would say that if the judiciary was here, they would say, for us, we're conducting judicial processes based on the information and evidence by the prosecution, by the DPP, which also came from the investigators which involves police and so on. So you cannot just lift the entire thing, because the judiciary will not sit there and just begin conducting business without prosecution or without evidence. And by the way, Counsel will let you know that there is a bar as to the standards. Even the state attorneys or DPP, to allow a file to proceed, there is a bar.
We do have two lawyers here, and
yes.
I'm sure they'll actually give us
yes,
a very
yes.
good rebuttal.
So for that matter, really, we should levy blame. We should be levying blame very, very objectively, because no party can operate on its own.
Thank you, Ambassador.
It's a link.
I have another question for you, but I will ask that later on. Let me first give your colleagues the opportunity to respond to you.
Simon has provoked another angle for Ssegirinya's death, that botched trial. Why do I call it that? There were disturbing patterns, and I know that case has stalled in court, so I think we are free to discuss elements of that case, since nobody's trying it. Yeah, because given the magnitude of what had happened in Masaka and the outcry, one would have assumed that the investigation and the prosecution would have given that case priority, tried it,
Swift,
and concluded it. Honorable Ssegirinya lawyer has kept asking for that. If you can't give us bail, can we proceed so that we defend our client? That also failed. But what happened in those massacres? One was a disturbing pattern of death of old women and men with young grandchildren who owned big chunks of land. So if somebody had studied that pattern, and I can tell you these are like 80% of the victims, or elderly people, you don't see the children, my generation and others, but they are grandchildren.
Vulnerable families.
Yes. So there could have been a pattern of deliberate land grabbers in those killings. But also, what is surprising is, why did the government then lose interest in trying that case? Because Ssegirinya has died while the case is ongoing, 4 years after his arrest. Honorable Sewanyana is still reporting to court. So what happened to the agency that denied these people bail? What happened to the grievance of the matter that the state could not proceed? The first witnesses who came to court embarrassed the state. They said, these guys have just told us, picked us from prison, and told us to incriminate you people. For us, we have not, before the judge. The state was embarrassed. They never brought other witnesses. So what actually transpired? And Ugandans would be interested. The first witnesses showed that it was a setup. Who killed those people? How come the so-called witnesses could not come forward to court? How come that case cannot proceed or could not proceed? Ugandans would want to know. The families who lost their loved ones in those massacre killings would want to know. I am privy to some of the conversations, and some people were alleging a hand with the money from another country. All that confusion. But why didn't the state table its evidence to pin down these people? Why that delay? So Ugandans need to ask these questions, at least for the sake of justice, for the departed Ssegirinya, who said he doesn't want to rest, he wants to keep fighting. So part of this fight should be a public interest inquiry on who killed the massacre people, and why couldn't the state proceed against the MPs?
And so therefore the state must continue to be on trial until this matter is resolved in the interest of Ssegirinya children and children's children.
Thank you. Moses, do you want to, you have a contribution you'd like to make? Because the question that and from the submissions of Dr. Sarah and also what Mr. Ochieno just said right now, the question still goes, what political environment do we find ourselves in? And as the ruling party, are you, as the party in power, are you proud of the kind of environment that you are creating for Ugandans?
You know, my senior colleague, Ambassador Simon, talked about the process of sanctioning of fires by the office of the DPP, where he indicated that by the time the DPP sanctions a fire, there is evidence to support the charge, and so the process of court can go ahead. That's the ideal. That's usually the ideal. But what happens with political cases, cases involving politicians, is that actually a political decision can be made, they have you arrested, then when they have you arrested, they brainstorm on which appropriate charge they can put you on, they put the charge on you, the DPP sanctions the fire, and then they start investigations to gather information to support the charge. That's what happens usually. That is why we have politicians in this country who have been charged several times in court, and cases have been dismissed or discontinued, or state loses interest just like that. Because when the state went to gather information to support the charge, they were not successful.
Not adding up.
So, like my colleague said, really, the kind of pomp that government gave to this case of Bijambia, you would have expected that they were going to proceed immediately. But here we are. Now someone has died. We have the Honorable Aaron, who is still alive, and I think perhaps there are others on the charge sheet, would have loved to see this. It would be nice for the state now to hit the ball rolling and resume the court proceedings and start to bring evidence, and so that we can really be able to get justice, and the state can clean its name in the death of this gentleman.
To you, Ambassador, I'm sure you wanted to respond, but also, can we do better as a country?
Of course, it is a responsibility of all parties. The Constitution is very clear about responsibilities of the citizens and all the structures and organs of government. And everybody wishes things are much better. There's no doubt about it. But it is now a call onto everyone to act responsibly, to act in a manner that is not disruptive. We cannot begin violent protests and then we blame police, that this police or this government. Let's also blame those who start and orchestrate disruptions, chaos, so that we don't just begin blaming people. That the government, the job of disruption is by others, and the people to be blamed are the other ones. And then you ask a fundamental question: can we be proud that this government is doing very well? Let's also send the questions to where they belong. The people who cause chaos, people who cause trouble, as well, to say, hey, what happened at the beginning of Adam and Eve? Who caused the trouble? We begin blaming God. So I think I think that question is very important, but it should go to the right address, as I said, not just the government.
Thank you.
No, I think for me, there are two lessons from this chaos. One is how should Parliament conduct its business in the event that they lose one of their own and they have a program to accord them an official burial. You see, Parliament, just before the burial, most of the MPs have official passports, and unless you don't want one. for ease of movement, for access of government, facilities as they travel, among others. So they are officers of Parliament, but by virtue of their election as MPs. So the question for me should be to Parliament, and I hope they will, when they reconvene, I hope they will debate what transpired, because it was their failure as an institution, first and foremost. So the lesson that I take from this is that Parliament should stay clear of political meandering. A family has lost their loved ones. Let Parliament, because these MPs sign with their next of kin. Let Parliament conduct where there is no organizing committee. Let Parliament conduct the next of kin and say, we have this program. Who do we contact? Who do we deal with? Let them stay clear of the political controversy. And for the other lesson for me is for the citizens to understand that MPs, by virtue of their service, they are entitled to Parliament covering their costs for burial. It's not a declaration of the state. Because the president and the executive can choose who to accord a state burial. But Parliament is mandated to accord a decent send-off for their MPs with a budget of taxpayers' money. It's not even budget money, government money, or it's our money. So the people also need to understand that when an MP dies, it's not a sitting MP, it's not a declaration of a state funeral. It's a function that Parliament should execute, and this function should be done by technical teams of Parliament to avoid political controversy.
Thank you. I think it's time for us to take a break. We'll go for a break now, and then when we return, we will talk about the next. We'll look at the next topic, which is actually Tuesday's new twist to the Dr. Kizza Besigye and his colleague Bireete Lutale's case at the Machindia Military Court. We'll be back shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and we are glad that you're still with us here on the Citizens Chat Show, streaming on YouTube at Civic Space TV. My name is Judith Atim once again, and we're talking about the chaotic send-off of Ssegirinya. We finished that conversation exhaustively, and now we want to look at the second part of our topic, which is the latest twist in the Kizza Besigye and Bireete Lutale's case. We very well know what happened on Tuesday this week, January 14th. Besigye and his colleague returned to the General Court Martial, and they declined to enter into a plea of guilt to the offense of treachery, which has been brought against them. But also a day before that, on the 13th of January, that was on Monday, the state had amended the charge sheet and added another suspect, a soldier at the rank of captain, identified as Dennis Oola. Besigye has maintained that the military court does not have powers to try civilians. He will not enter into a plea of guilt. And it's the same thing his team of lawyers have been fighting for. And of course, one of the lawyers is here with us, Moses Byamugisha. We shall be talking a lot more about that. But also, we shall also look briefly about the recent shooting to death of 6 civilians by the police at Acacia in Kisementi on grounds that they were plotting to rob a bank There has been a lot of conversation about that. People are questioning what's the police right to actually execute these people in broad daylight. Could they have handled the situation better? Could they have been arrested? There are also people who say, well, this is a good thing. It will send a strong signal to any would-be criminal gangs who want to assault or civilians. But there are also questions of justice and upholding human rights and so on. And we'll be hearing a lot more from our panelists here. I'll start with you again, Ambassador.
You start.
Which one? Or let's on the issue of Kizza Besigye. I think I'll start with Counsel Moses. Moses, I'm sure you were in court.
Yes.
Yes.
I wasn't in court, but you know, whatever ends in court is prepared somewhere.
Yeah.
First of all, the major things that happened in court this week was that our side raised...
Which side is that side?
Besigye's side.
Yeah, you didn't say it.
Yes. So now maybe I should...
No, because I had mentioned
speak in the language of the court.
I had mentioned that he is one of Dr. Kizza Besigye's lawyers, but it's okay.
The defense raised issues that they felt needed to be determined by the Constitutional Court. Quite a number of issues, by the way. The first one was whether Parliament, by legislating to confer jurisdiction to military courts over civilians, violated Article 79 of the Constitution. The defense wants the Constitutional Court to determine that, because why this comes up as the first issue is because the prosecution or the military is insisting that it has that the court-martial is given by law given powers to try civilians. So the defense wanted that issue to be determined by the Constitutional Court. If it's true that the military has powers to try civilians, the Constitutional Court should explain. Could it have been a lapse? What by Parliament? Could it have been a mistake by Parliament to give powers to the military? The second one was whether the acts of the court-martial are in violation of Article 2082 of the Constitution, which subjects the UPDF under the civilian authority. All power that is presumed to be exercised by any office of government or any office is derived from the Constitution. The mandate comes from the people. All power belongs to the people. So if there is any officer or office that presupposes that wants to exercise power outside what the people wanted, couldn't it be, isn't it illegal? Quickly, the third one, does the court-martial have the mandate to continue trying civilians when the Constitutional Court already ruled against that in the case of Michael Kabaziguruka and Andrew Karamaji, Captain Amoni Byarugaba versus Attorney General? That was the third issue. The fourth, whether Article 128 is being violated by the Constitution. Fifth, whether the court-martial is independent, given the fact that it may adjourn to consult the convening authority, which is the High Command. And the High Command, the chairman of the High Command is the President, who has an interest in such a political case. Given the circumstances under which the members of the court-martial are appointed by the Commander-in-Chief and remain serving officers of the UPDF, in a situation where it's the same UPDF prosecuting Dr. Besigye, is it possible to be impartial? Who decides which civilians should go to the civilian courts and which one goes to the court-martial? Whether the government of Uganda violated the Constitution by executing MOUs, because the court-martial is saying that there is an MOU, allegedly, there is an MOU between Uganda and Kenya that is supposed, that gives them powers to put away extradition laws. So the issue 8 is whether the government of Uganda violated the Constitution by executing MOUs with Kenya to exchange suspects instead of executing an extradition treaty as required by the Extradition Act. And 9, whether the accused's rights to legal representation under Article 28.3 were violated when one of the lawyers of the defense team was arrested and imprisoned, and can a convicted lawyer continue to represent the accused because the lawyer has a specific task. As you recall, viewers, lawyer Aaron was arrested, taken away, and when he appeared again, he was being sentenced. No trial, no fair hearing. And Article 28 is about fair hearing. So there are quite a number of issues without taking much time that are up to 11. And those issues were on Tuesday raised by the defense team, imploring the court-martial to see sense in those issues being referred to the Constitutional Court. At the end of the day, I think around 6 or 7, the chairman of the court-martial, Afande Freeman, ruled that the court-martial, it was not necessary to refer those issues to the court-martial, and I mean to the Constitutional Court.
Yeah.
Besigye was remanded until early Feb to return, and the trial continues normally. That is what transpired
on Tuesday.
On Tuesday, just to update the viewers.
Thank you very much. Let me come to you, Sarah, as well. You're a legal mind, then I move to this other gentleman.
Okay, you know, the trial, the continued trial of civilians in general, not just Besigye and Haji Lutale, is a national controversy. It has raised so much outcry, and it's unfortunate to see the judiciary and Justice Idiologue, you know, playing around and carrying on as if it's business as usual without resolving this matter. Why do I say so? Article 126, Clause 1 is very clear that judicial power is exercised, is derived from the people, and must be exercised by the courts established under this Constitution in accordance with the wishes, aspirations, and values of the people. So when you have an issue that becomes a national headache, that becomes a depressing issue to the nation, from Karamoja to Kisoro, from Western Nile to I don't know what border. You cannot draw all borders of Uganda. And then you have, I was thinking as we were coming for this show, I was thinking, what should Ugandans do to the judiciary? Should we get all their numbers? We keep texting every minute. Where is the decision on this? Because the Constitutional Court in 3 decisions has been clear in 3 decisions. One of Kawaziguruka, that is a subject of appeal at Supreme Court, another one of Byarugaba, and another one of Semuju. 3 different decisions. The Constitutional Court, whose function under Article 137 of the Constitution is to interpret the Constitution, has outlawed the trial of civilians in court-martial. Then you get Justice Idiologue in connivance with Attorney General. They put an injunction on implementation of Constitutional Court decisions. An injunction that is now going into the 4th year. 4 years of an injunction on a matter of fundamental rights and freedoms. On a matter that has caused national chaos because of the desire by the executive to implement martial law. That is unconstitutional. Martial law is unconstitutional. So you don't know what we should do. to the Judiciary of Uganda. The appeal of Kabazuguruka has been heard 3 times, something that is unheard of. 3 times. 3 panels of the Supreme Court has had 1 case, and there is no judgment. The first excuse of the first panel is that 2 judges died without passing a judgment. But also they had delayed to pass the judgment. The Judicial Code of Conduct, under Canon 6, says a judge should issue a judgment in 60 days. This does not work with our Supreme Court under Justice Owinidoro. When you go to Canon 10 of the Judicial Conduct, it says when there is a matter of constitutional interpretation, the courts shall suspend all other business and give priority to the matter of constitutional interpretation. As if that was not enough, we have national controversy going on. National dilemma. Trial of civilians in Karamoja by court martial. Some of them are executed. Civilians, young children. You have trial of politicians. We have had the issue of NUP since 2001 elections in court martial. Now we have Besigye and Lutale in court martial. And then you have the Chief Justice carrying on, driving in the citizens' convoy with the sirens, throwing citizens off the road, with the protection at his house, with all the respect that we accord him, and he cannot resolve this national dilemma, touching on constitutionality of the trial of civilians in court martial. Of what use is he to the civilian, to the country? Why can't he resign? Why?
You take, Ambassador.
I don't know where Dr. Bireete met with the Justice Owi.
I've never met him in person.
Because
And I have no
the
desire
way she
to
talks is, she borders on personal.
I was citing the law.
Institution.
There is nothing personal. I have cited, for the benefit of viewers, I have cited the Constitution. I have cited the Judicial Code of Conduct.
The rules of this house is that you listen to each other in silence.
Not on rise.
And I did so. The issue is, thank you, Counsel, for updating us, because sometimes we're too busy to watch TV to see what's happening. Some of us, like Joseph, occasionally goes to the court. I sometimes see him on some clips where he's very prominently present. Since we don't have such opportunities, we may not know exactly, and thank you so much for that. There was also the issue of, you mentioned extradition, and the
MOU for
the
swapping of
yes,
citizens, as if we are under a war.
and yes, and whether Uganda's institutions like police and so on have jurisdiction beyond their borders. And I saw Senior Counsel Martha Karua's defining the borders and reminding the court that the borders stop at my place in Luahaha and Malaba and not.
Yes, that was issue 10. It was saying whether Parliament contravened the, just to be clear, whether Parliament contravened the Constitution when they legislated the UPDF Act giving court-martial authority to try offences committed outside Uganda, and yet under Article 79 of the Constitution, Parliament can only legislate for Uganda, and the boundaries of Uganda territory are defined under Article 5 and Schedule 2 of the Constitution of Uganda. Something related to what you're saying.
True. You know, I'm a lawmaker because I was part of the team that made the Constitution, and I also have been part of a number of parliaments that have made various laws. And making law is one thing, the interpretation is another. Because whereas they emphasize they have their own principles for interpretation. And they talk of the spirit. What was the spirit with which this was discussed? And when they talk about that spirit, they talk of their understanding more than what was prevailing at the time in actual sense. So that brings in the gymnastic of arguments for and against whether something meant this or it is this and so on. And then some other group, which is the Constitutional Court, that makes a final interpretation. And before all that is done, I think what's happening is that Parliament did make a law in their true senses and amended to include the provisions that would make a civilians who conducts oneself in a manner that makes one look like, be like, accompany, behave, and so on, like the military, to be tried in courts. And there were reasons for it. Now, Parliament is a representation of the people. You know, when people read that all powers belong to the people, they stop somewhere. But I'll read it for you. Article 1, Sub-Article 1, which says, all power belongs to the people. And this is where they stop. But I'll read the rest of it. Who shall exercise their sovereignty in accordance with this constitution? Power does not just belong to the people and the world stops there. Power belongs to the people, but they exercise that power in accordance with the provisions of the constitution that actually designates, empowers, provides for various institutions of government, of the state, and that's how that power of the people is exercised. So you cannot just begin saying, because I was saying personalizing because you're going for the person of Owinjitoro, not just the position of the Chief Justice, because the Right Honorable, is it, how do you call it, the worship?
My lordship.
The Lordship. Yes, Counsel, you have to guide us here.
Who are you referring to?
The Chief Justice.
His Lordship.
His lordship.
His Lordship, Owinjitoro, does not perform the function of his office just alone. It's an office, it's an institution, it's an entire institution. And he cannot just take his personal decisions at liberty at all times.
But he provides leadership.
That's what I'm saying, that he does not just do it all along individually because he has a team that he works with. In fact, he can be opposed if he wanted to carry on things by himself and all along by himself. He can't. So I think we should have some, we should give some liberty to the fact that the Chief Justice operates as an institution, and then we take it on aside. Because if we just call his name as if he's the only person who does the thing alone, maybe from his bedroom, or when he's having breakfast alone, I think that's overstretching the complaint or the blame. And as to the court, of course, I don't know. I don't want to go into the matter particularly of my good friend, the Honorable Dr. Kizza Besigye and his colleague. But here we're just talking about the principles and the practice of things as we see them. When it comes to national security, the issues of survival of the state, because I told you there are three objects of the state. It is survival, it is growth, and there is competition. Because the state competes with other states in various fronts. Growth is when they must do things to develop and grow. But survival is fundamental. If anything of national security nature touches on the issue of the survival of the state will do everything necessary to act, to protect and defend itself, to survive. Issues of the law notwithstanding. I have seen cases of what you call abductions, an infringement on the legal provisions of, first of all, sovereignty and the question of extradition. So many cases. I've seen cases of Israel against the Nazi suspects in Argentina. I've seen cases of America with the former president of Panama. I've seen there are about 15 or 18 cases where states have acted where they believe it is about the survival of the state, and they breach that. I know it's a breach of the law because lawyers will say it's a breach. I agree with you, it's a breach. But that breach happens in certain extreme conditions. I'm not justifying the circumstance, but I'm just telling you a statement of fact. Dr. Sarah liking it not liking it notwithstanding. So the issue is, yes, there are, other than constitutional provisions, there are other bilateral and multilateral arrangements. It is not just bilateral between the two states, where they have had a number of defense and security agreements, but also there are multilateral agreements, protocols under the EAC on issues of terrorism, on issues of state security, and so on, that are in place. I know the lawyers will want to stretch the interpretation, to question them. That's your liberty. Just do that. But for you to even have the liberty to have an atmosphere to question it, there is a precondition for it to happen.
So we must thank you for our rights.
Whether you thank the state or you don't thank them,
inherent rights.
yeah, but inherent, even the concept of inherency is questionable. Because inherency
Please
and
qualify.
creation.
Yeah, qualify.
Yes, because inherent, but is given by who?
By God. You are born with them.
And
that's inherent.
The concept of inheritance was just a creation by a person like you and me. It is not created from the Bible, the book of creation.
Have we changed it?
And yes, I know, but I'm saying when it comes to issues of survival of the state, the question of legalities are set aside. Well, I know we may not like it. I know you can oppose it, but it is a fact that happened. And it has happened not just in Uganda, and it's not going to stop with Uganda. I can name as many as 10, 15 countries that have done it, and properly, and as you say so, inherency, violation of constitutional rights, violation of, you can even add in
Are you Ugandan by choice?
Yes, people choose to change citizenship. They change. I've seen some people, even some who live in our families, who have chosen not to be Americans, but they're Ugandans, have chosen not to be Ugandans, they're Kenyans.
No, what I mean, did you choose to be born in Uganda? Did you vote about it?
Those who were obligated to produce me made a choice.
Thank you. It's not yours.
Yeah, exactly. But as they made a choice, it means choices can be made. It's not automatic. Because choices can be made.
Okay.
So I think I'll leave it at that, but I'm saying, and then finally, of course, what Sarah is belaboring about the shortfalls of the judicial institutions not to pronounce themselves on this matter. I hope they do. Because really, on either side, there are lingering anxieties. Where will the Constitutional Court lean when they make that decision? Will they lean on the side of Parliament, the way they passed the UPDF Act? Will they lean on the other side against Parliament? And I think that's the issue. And Counsel will let you know that the Constitution provided for structures of courts in this country. And if you go by it, the UPDF court does not fall under them. And for that matter, they have a basis to urge against it. I don't know why they never went ahead to amend the Constitution to also include the UPDF court. That's the point I'm making. It's not a kangaroo court. I'm saying that's a loophole that actually legal minds like yours will use. Because if you go to the structures of courts of judicature in this country, the court martial is not among them. So I think there should be an amendment to include them so that this closes the chapter of that the war of interpretation.
I think really, just a minute, this is a very unfortunate conclusion for Honorable Ambassador Simon Mulongo, with your exposure and expertise, to sit on this show and advocate for a military kangaroo court that is causing mayhem in the country to be part of our constitution. I know that they are indirectly mentioned subordinate courts, but these subordinate courts, the law, when you go under Article 129(2), it mentions the courts of Uganda. The courts on record are High Court, Court of Appeal, and Supreme Court. So that means that the other subordinate courts are not courts of record, because Article 129(2) is very clear. Even the interpretation that appeals from the military court martial cannot come, I know the recent decision of Supreme Court. It casts, a lot of doubt, whether, I don't know, that, because if this Article 129(2) is very clear on what is a court of record, and it starts from High Court, Court of Appeal, and Constitutional Court, how do you then deny citizens a chance to appeal from a military tribunal into civilian courts? It's really disturbing.
Yeah, but do you think...
And that is a creature of regulations. Regulations are subordinate, are subsidiary. They are not part of a record of law. They can be amended. So a problem arising from regulations of the UPDF Act to now be interpreted to say that in a military tribunal, it remains a tribunal. Let me tell you, other than the confusion Parliament put in section 119 of the UPDF Act, that is a subject of controversy on persons subject to military law. Every person, under one, the following persons shall be subject to military law. Then you have every person not otherwise subject to military law who aids or abates a person to military law in the commission of a service offense, and every person found in an unlawful possession of arms, ammunition, or equipment ordinarily being the monopoly of the UPDF. And then the last clause, other classified stores as prescribed. So when you look at the amendment of the charge sheet to introduce Captain Dennis Ola, Captain Dennis Ola has been in the military custody for 2 years. Now the army alleges that a prisoner for 2 years, one charged first in 2023, charged again in February 2024, that connived with the Besigye to go to Greece, Sweden, and Nairobi to procure arms to overthrow the regime. Where was that prison escape? How did he escape prison? 2, prisons have frequency.
The dates when the things were commissioned?
Yes. So, of course, Besigye was got from Nairobi around October, November. So, where was this guy? So, they are amending the charge sheet to try to struggle to fit in, because that's why he's accused 1. Meaning, he is the originator of the crimes Besigye and Judiciary are accused of. So they are using this clause of every person not otherwise subject of military law who aids or abets a person subject to military law. So that's why they've made him A1. A1 in custody for 2 years. How did he do all that conspiracy?
Yeah, but they said the dates of Greece and others.
Yes, the dates are mentioned. So when you come to arms, ammunition, and equipment, ordinary being the monopoly of defense forces. So if Besigye had 2 pistols in Nairobi, how does 2 pistols in Nairobi become a monopoly of UPDF?
They said,
does UPDF have...
Where they belong?
Where
they belong to Kenyan security system or Uganda?
The arms?
The arms.
Yes.
It is alleged that the Mzungu is the one who had brought to the arms. So, did the Mzungu in Sweden get the pistols from Uganda, and where did they pass to go to Kenya? Because who can pass the borders armed? If indeed the pistols belong to Uganda, in which border do you pass when you're armed? Whether by road or by plane,
By
where do you pass when you're armed? You are a security person. Have you ever crossed borders when you're armed?
Yes.
Under what circumstances? Unless you are part of the presidential, those arms must
There are
be
many
cleared.
circumstances for
They are
crossing
officially
borders.
cleared. You tell us.
Explain.
There are so many circumstances where you can cross. We've crossed to Sudan and Congo with arms. You can also
On what
fight.
conditions?
You
On
can
what
also- you can
what was the justification for that? Because there has to be, what Sarah is
Yeah.
saying is about the
Yes.
justification for you to
Yes.
cross. What are the
They can
grounds?
also be smuggling. You can smuggle the weapons out. Arms proliferation, actually, we have a huge number of arms in this country that have come in through illicit means. So it can also cross borders through illicit means. And also, finally, it can also cross the border through formalities.
Okay, so Besigye went to Nairobi through the airport. The trade is there. Under what circumstances would Besigye pass the airport when he's armed?
It can also be through a formality when it's formal, clearance, paperwork. Also, it could have been smuggled.
No, but you see, according to the charge sheet, these are illegal arms in possession of Besigye.
Yes.
So how did he pass the airport with them?
No. But you see, you're asking a question to restrict the circumstances, and I'm sure the prosecutors have all the details. But I've told you that it is very possible to cross the border with arms, and I've given you the 4 or 5 ways of crossing with arms.
When you are under situation of war that is cleared, the border clears you to go and fight. That is South Sudan, that is Congo. When you are part of the presidential...
Oh, you invade.
Yes. When you are part of the presidential convoy, you have clearance. I don't know any other circumstance.
Yes, even if, I don't want to say something, but to say this, you can actually cross the border formally, even if you're just an individual with a firearm.
When you are licensed to
As
have
long-
an
as long
arm in
as-
the country you are going
as
to.
long as you do paperwork, that's right. The other one is smuggling. You can smuggle arms.
Through the airport.
Why the airport?
Because that's why Besigye passed and
It doesn't have to be. It
obeyed.
doesn't have to go with it to the airport. There are people who can smuggle those arms across the border without necessarily going through clearance means, and the arms are in Nairobi. That's not even impossible. So I don't want to insinuate or say what, but actually, Counsel, you have to guide us whether we're being, how do you call it?
Sub judice.
Sub judice.
No.
Because, no, I just don't want that. But what I can tell you is that
Even I was confident we're not.
you can actually smuggle arms to Nairobi and you find them there. That's not difficult, and it's not a miracle because illicit proliferation
If
of arms
you use
is so strong
unofficial
in our region.
entries, if you use unofficial entries, Besigye used it to the airport.
Let me hear, Joseph, we've not given you ample time to actually contribute in this session. I would like to
No, because if the two lawyers are speaking on these big legal matters, and particularly if and when Sarah is struggling to match
to connect the dots and make sense of everything. Yeah.
the heavy duty being, unleashed by the state, as represented by Simon, the best you can
I don't
do.
represent the state.
The best, but you're representing them very well. So, yes, you do.
No, I don't.
I'm generally quite concerned that the insinuations or suggestions about these things about inherency of rights, and coming from you that if you consider what has been going on, the almost apparent impunity by the state, and considering what we are discussing, I'm genuinely worried that we are operating under a police state. We said on this program before, Simon, that the manner in which Besigye has been handled has been terrible. Besigye should not be in that military establishment. Besigye, if indeed some of his people smuggled arms into Kenya and took those arms to his hotel place in Nairobi, and your very decent and effective security and intelligence established that all they needed to do was to coordinate with the Kenyan security and arrest Besigye, arraign him in a civilian court in Kenya, and Besigye does go through the due process. Ruto is Museveni's boy, so there is no.
You can't say that.
There's no doubt that.
Boy?
In
His
that,
Excellency the President Ruto is the head of state and the government of Kenya.
Okay,
He's not a boy.
young Ruto to Museveni. They call him father. In fact, they even call him grandfather. That sometimes I find almost quite irritating. But look, so there is no doubt that the Kenyan authorities would have handled Besigye very well, you know, and there's no way in which they would have done anything that would necessarily compromise the interest of the Ugandan state as represented. That's what they need to have done. Beyond that, Besigye was kidnapped and brought into Uganda, crudely unlawfully. All this conversation sometimes, lest we forget, leads us to forgetting the kind of things that we should really have thought about exceptionally under Idi Amin. And if they ever happen at any time, even under the UPS administration, you know, they're not the kind of conversation we should be having. Thankfully, under UPS administration, we're so decent that you are the one invoking God and you're talking with God. No, we are very, very close to saintly these days, you know, as far as these matters are concerned. But no, that's not our interest. Our interest is the future of this country. Fast forward, as presented by our good friend here. As I said, I was in court the other day. I've been following up these things, and we look at the submissions. The state quite clearly is playing a comic drama, and the drama is seemingly designed to do nothing but to scare off the citizens, cause fear, show that, well, you know, we can go and steal from Karamoja, but there's nothing you can do. We can go ahead and do whatever we want to do with your powers, you know, and you don't go to the courts of law because you know, we have our judiciary under lock, and we can go ahead and play with Ssegirinya, and you're not going to go anywhere. I really think that this is a game of a mind game which is being played in a military way. Actually, Sarah, when you look through the proceedings there, someone accused me of being there. Of course, yes, I was there.
I didn't accuse you.
Okay, you know what I'm saying.
I noted.
I usually watch on online proceedings. You know, some of these things are extremely disturbing. I don't know the amount of headache I would get in that court, but also the amount of anger that I would feel in these courts. You look at the panel of judges, looking on sheepishly as proceedings go. No, why do I say so? In normal courts that we are trained to work in, a judge keeps writing every word uttered in court because it's part of the proceedings. It's part of the record. And it's part of what he will refer to, he or she, to make a decision. So judges are very busy in courts, writing submissions, writing laws being quoted, writing precedents being quoted. These military generals don't write. That's why they keep looking.
You know what?
Then, wait. Then the judge advocate, who is supposed to be the advisor of this panel, has taken over.
And is Mr. Instructor.
He's now the chairman.
Yes.
He's the practical chairman of that court. No, yes, he's actually instructing these generals who keep on watching. That's not the role of judge advocate. We have seen this court before. A judge advocate does not dominate court with speeches. Most of the time he writes to the chairman, passes on a note. But this one is the chairman.
Simon, that's partly where I was actually going. It's in the interest of the state. You guys, whatever you do, you need to up your games.
They need to even manage the optics. It's very
you need to up your games. And so even I, who was there, by the more than twice, I was compelled to giggle, you know,
but you not
in disbelief.
You not cheer.
You know, what is there to cheer?
Because
Seriously, what's there to change?
she
No, I know you're being very provocative, but no, you guys need to up your games. The presentations and submissions by these guys, that's another matter. Martha Karua actually told the judge advocate that, look, I think you've seen part of the clips.
Yes,
But look, I've been a judge advocate before, so
Yeah, that's,
you know,
it's
kind of stuff.
it's usurping the powers of the court.
And you know, this is a television channel for a young audience. We are genuinely trying to persuade the youth of this country that better is possible, you know. And I'm not quite sure whether whatever is actually being played up at Makindi is really anything that the youth of this country ought to be observing. Certainly it's not what I expected ever to watch, even if it was in the 80s, because I didn't. And I don't think it's something that I would expect to be watching in 2025. So what next? Then come in Captain Oola. Hey, that was an interesting shock to me. You know, that was an interesting shock. So what is this other one? So Sarah has already made the submission. There's nothing else to add. It is actually nonsensical drama. And as I said, if it's real about the livelihood of our peoples, Simon, if NRA has got any evidence against Kizza Besigye, you know,
Take it to civilian courts.
take Kizza Besigye to civilian court, you know, pump your evidence, you know, let Besigye, yes, let Besigye be found guilty, convict him, let him serve his bit, and we will continue as citizens, and particularly because there's something to do with security. And now we added this kind of thing called trickery. I am such a Ugandan nationalist, such a Ugandan patriot, that the other day I found Museveni trying to teach patriotism in Kenya. I found it so quite distasteful. Oh yes, in this thing, you don't watch the video.
Which
no,
patriotism?
I'm an African patriot.
what was the Luas like?
So the point is this, Simon, we care about this country. We love this region. We love this continent. We love our peoples. Simon, some of us are fighting, and some of the young people whom we're trying to teach and to grow, is to do so quickly that we hope that in the next 10 years, the group of leadership, the group of judicial systems and order that emerges out of this continent should be able to help us to do what? To go to the moon and beat the Americans and beat the Indians, you know, and beat them in the sea and also beat them in air. And if this is what we're playing, I don't think we're going anywhere.
Thank you. So we have about 30 minutes or so to actually wrap up this discussion. I don't know if you wanted to say something.
Yes,
shortly?
just briefly before we
Before
switch
we
on.
move to the Acacia Mall shooting.
Yes. You know, in the eastern DRC, there is a rebel group operating there called the Allied Democratic Movement of Forces. Its former leader, Mr. David Stephen, who popularly is known as Jamir Mukuru, had been on the wanted list for some time. And in the year 2015, he was arrested in Tanzania. Jamir Mukuru and his ADF are not, any Ugandan has heard about ADF, the activities, what the government say, or the crimes that the government accuse them with, but also operations where they themselves have claimed to have been successful in attacking Uganda, killing Ugandans. When Jamir Mukuru was arrested, notwithstanding the high demand for his and the urgency for which we wanted him to be tried in Uganda, or the crimes, or Jamir Mukuru was taken through an extradition process in Tanzania. Until a time he was brought to Uganda. My senior brother passionately talked about how far the state can go to keep itself in power. And I listened attentively because I think he was being very honest. Yes, we see these things happen. But the reason why we got Parliament to legislate is to prevent excesses and abuse of the state, to regulate its actions in its attempt to stay in power. And it is because such excesses are regulated, are all controlled, that states fall. Otherwise, states would be willing to even kill the entire country, its population, for it to stay in power, no matter how unpopular the government runs. But let me go back to the point. Jamil Mukuru was extradited and brought to Uganda. And when he was brought to Uganda, he's facing trial in the crimes in Kororo.
Crimes division.
In the crimes division
Of High Court.
of the High Court. A celebrated, I don't want to speak, I don't want to speak like a non-lawyer who would see someone guilty until proven innocent. As someone who some of the things we accuse him for, he has openly said, we did it, wanted to make a point. When he was brought here, he was taken in a civilian court. But it is on Besigye where the security draws a line that they have to wait for him to go to Kenya. Someone who had been in here in Uganda, who was even returning to Uganda, he was not escaping. He was only attending a 2-day event to return. But they follow him up to Kenya, arrest him, and bring him through the night, and keep him for 4 days in Communicado without anyone knowing, and then present him to court to say whatever they are saying. That's why we are not contented. That's why we are saying, no, the state is not, is going overboard. Even when we know, yes, it needs to survive. We already put laws that help the state to survive. We already put those laws. We put the extradition, which I already tell you, the Uganda has already benefited in exercising such treaties. So I wanted to say, yes, the state can survive, and it is right to try and survive, but we've already established its mechanism on how to survive. In this case of Dr. Besigye, the state has gone out of its way in its attempt to survive, and yes, the trial is going to go on, but it's going to face embarrassment, as some of the facts are already coming out. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're moving now to the recent incident in which 6 men were actually shot dead by the police at Acacia Mall on suspicion that they were planning to rob someone who had gone to transact at one of the banks there. But I'm just reading now, Parliament has actually been having a similar conversation on the same thing. And I am reading that the Minister for Internal Affairs, General Kahinda Otafire, actually had to make a statement before the House in which he actually condemned the killings, and he emphasized the importance of adherence to legal procedures. In his own words, and I'm quoting, "Under no circumstances should a Ugandan be executed. I regret that these 6 Ugandans were gunned down on mere suspicion." He goes on to say that we must ensure arrests and detentions are backed by solid evidence. Don't arrest anybody until you are satisfied with the facts. So, and he said, if life is to be lost, it must be within the law. So let us follow the procedures even as we fight for the rights of those who are killed. Well, earlier when we were talking about this, I think I highlighted the fact that this incident has actually also polarized Ugandans. There are those who say, well, this is a good gesture by the police. Citizens are tired of these gangs moving on borders and attacking innocent people. But there are people who actually saying similar things that the general has just said, that were these people actually wrongdoers, were they actually criminals? Was the police a little high-handed in, did they make a rash decision to gun down this man? But the police also earlier said they had tracked these people for some time, and there was a pattern in their movements and activities, and they knew that they were going to actually get involved in some criminal thing. But the fact is they were killed before. So how do you then establish intent to commit a crime when you've already killed somebody? Starting with the
state.
Okay, Ambassador.
He introduced something new in the previous topic. Can I just have a small paragraph
Just
on that?
yeah, a minute or less if you can.
You see, the issue of Jamil Mkulu was a matter of collaborative effort between the Interpol, Uganda, and Tanzania. And this is a high-profile case in terms of international terrorism. Jamil Mkulu was part of the team that trained in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, and was part of the members of Al-Qaeda. And as such, the establishment of the International Crimes Division in Uganda was purposely for that. And because of the involvement of police, and also given that, he had to go to that court. For the other one, I think it is the decision of the powers that be in terms of military, prosecutors and so on, who determined that he could be taken to the military courts. And of course, the survival of the state, I hope we're not mixing the state and government.
Yeah, good clarification,
So
that's important.
the state is a state, and the governments are the ones who want to survive and who want to come back after elections. But the state, these are the structures, as you know very well, the civil service, the military, the police, and such stuff. Anyway, back to
Basics.
to Acacia. I also learned of it, and the explanation that came afore was that these were, it was an action after tip-off that people were coming to rob the bank, and that information from inside, collaborated by some sources, which made the police convinced that they had to waylay these people at the time, at the point of the act. Now, then of course it happened, and at the end of it, some people were dead. But of course, as we said informally before, there were questions that were emerging. Is it true that they were tipped off through intelligence, and that this intelligence was accurate, that was timely, or is it something else that is at play here? So I think we need to get as much information that can either collaborate or actually, to the contrary, say something different. The operational procedures that security personnel like the police have to use. If it was the military, it is very easy. You define the enemy, determine the enemy, look at the capabilities of the enemy, look at the plans of the enemy, and then you study the operating environment. Then you can now take action accordingly. But for the police, as law enforcers, they are supposed to take an extra mile, because at the end of it, it may result into a case. And if it results into a case, then they should not be blamed for doing it wrongly. They're supposed to ensure that they do it in a manner that it has evidence. Either they, for example, they have voices recorded, video recorded of the prior meetings, or the person who tipped them has additional information and evidence that they can make them believe of the reports. And when they come, they would have been identified prior. Somebody with a bald head, with the glasses, without rims, and so on, with the red necktie. Then you can say, yes, that's the guy that the description fits, and so on. So I hope there is a trail that emanates from the source of the tip-off all through until when the so-called suspects arrived at the scene, and that it's not just a bystander there, also getting caught in a crossfire. So I just hope that there is that build-up. Otherwise, they can be challenged. But of course, executing such missions as police, it can be very tricky, Sometimes there are coincidences. Not everybody with the red tie is that suspect or the same description. There could be somebody else innocent. So there are
But
always
6 mistakes.
Are you referring to this red?
no.
He's trying to joke along this line.
Not
But,
joke, I'm not joking. I'm just using an example of somebody, an ideal. He's not here. Of course, not my brother here. So, to me, those are the principles.
Thankfully, in UPC, we don't have criminals.
And he was talking about the saintly UPC. I didn't have time to list the litany of actions that were done by UPC that are so boring that we don't want to read them in history. But anyway, back to this, I think, to me, that's that. So, the Minister Otafire, the Honorable Otafire, I don't know, you're reading, I don't know whether that's what he said accurately. But also it's important for the Minister to tell us what actions
The next action.
he has done or is intending to do, in case what he's saying is what is he believes to be the issue of doubt. So, anyway, back to you.
Yeah, sure. I think he actually talked about that. He actually says he had contacted, I think, the police and told them, I'll actually get the right quote for that. I will.
Yeah, but if I may come in, so the police are custodians of keeping law and order. That means that in their conduct, as they keep law and order, then they should do it by example. They are not invited to be outlaws in order to keep law and order. So in an operation of such nature, because the police statement says that these people were on the police watch list for a while, that alone would assume that the police was fully aware of their activities prior or even plans, because with the digital means, the police should have capacity to listen into such conversations. Because I hope it's not just the other security that took all our gadgets for listening to politicians. This country does a lot more of political policing than keeping law and order. So most of our phones are bugged, they are
So
listening to
where has that
conversations.
come from?
No, I'm just saying that I hope that the police also has some of these gadgets that are used to bug politicians' phones. Because they should be listening to criminals or people planning criminality, not the people going about their registered business, like political parties or civil society. This is what they concentrate on. So one would assume that they had these details of this. If it's a gang of 6, are they calling each other? Are they communicating? Have you listened to what they are saying? Because that should be the basis. Then, in hindsight, you would even estimate how armed is the enemy. Because use of force demands that the force must be proportional to the threat. The police shot, is it 4 or 6 people?
6.
One of them had backed their border, shot, fell down. Another one was standing, put his arms up, saying, I've surrendered, come and check me, I'm not armed, shot in the face. What does that mean? That there was no logic of responding according to the perceived threat.
Is there a video clip for you?
Yeah, these are video clips I've watched. So you see that in this operation, the police went to kill as compared to arresting. And they are hoodwinking citizens. If you issue a statement that we have neutralized the others, except one who has sustained injuries, why don't they say that we have killed? Because what is to neutralize when people are dead? Because, I mean really, because they are accountable to the people. We have neutralized. So the police meaning of neutralizing is murder.
I think that's what it is, isn't it? In security, in security circles, when you say we've neutralized the target of the threat, that means you've murdered.
And also put out of action.
It's not murder, it's not murder.
What does it mean?
You've deterred the actions.
When you neutralize, it means you have put to an end
They are intended
the
actions.
threat.
Yes.
And murder is a different thing. Yeah.
So they wrote that they've neutralized the others.
Officials don't officially murder.
Except one who has sustained
They don't
interns.
officially murder.
No.
What's the word for it?
The police is not supposed
What's
to
the
come
word
to
for it?
murder people.
They neutralize. They put out of action.
Neutralize means murder.
No.
It's another word for it, I think. It's
I think-
it's a softer
Does
word.
it
Does it change
Murder-
the fact that
murder is taking life by those unlawfully. It's taking life
So
unlawfully.
is this one taken lawfully?
Well, these are circumstances that we are talking about. Whether they did so lawfully or there is something else. And this is what the minister is also questioning. To me, the difficult position here is that we don't know what information they're armed with, the description of the suspects, and whether all the things are what they've gathered before. So to me, I wouldn't want to judge the police at this moment, but it is very important to get all details.
We are
information.
discussing the circumstances that are known to us. So when you go out in an operation, somebody stops a border, he has stopped. You shoot him to fall down. Why did you arrest him?
Yeah.
Another one surrenders and says, I'm here and I'm not armed. Come and check me. You shoot in the face. Why don't you arrest them? Because the best way to eliminate crime is to make sure every suspect has their day in court. So what was the purpose, the intention of the police? And when the minister says that he doesn't know why these people were killed, and there were civilians who were injured, 2 of them. They were walking about doing their business.
Crossfire. Straight.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Collateral.
So if you have an operation of that nature, why don't you block traffic? You have an operation, people are planning to rob the bank. Your mind should be that these people will attempt to escape, some of them. So why don't you block traffic and stop people from being in this crossfire area? Block traffic from Kamboja, block traffic from wherever, and do your operation. 30 minutes or so, and you're done. Why do you leave citizens moving in an area where you've come to chase robbers?
That's a James Bond mindset.
we're actually running out of time,
Yes.
and I request that we actually move a little faster and we wind up. Joseph.
Judith, in 1986, March the 6th, 1988, March the 6th, and that's sort of around the age of Ssegirinya, ironically, interestingly. But I was just saying, most of your fantastic young background camera crew would possibly not have been born yet. There was this big thing called Death on the Rock. I'm sure you have heard about these documentaries, and for you lawyers, you must actually, you guys particularly, following on to Besigye's case. This was a very heavily politicized case of British security services killing 3 Irish Republican Army operatives. Irish Republicans, these were the Irish anti-British revolutionaries. So these were guys in active service opposed to the British government in Ireland. But these guys were gunned down in Gibraltar. It was possibly one of the most critical moments for British occupation of Northern Ireland. The case and the argument and the political fallout, which even the British government said that the SAS, the special services officers who did the killing, were wrong, was that these guys were shot at without warning, and like Sarah said, there was no sign that they were given opportunity to surrender. It became a critical thing. It's one of the reasons why Britain eventually lost Northern Ireland, and it was a big thing with Spain that actually has a territorial jurisdiction over Gibraltar, that island. I want to say, Simon, that a future UPC government would ensure that at any time, any discharge of firearms, by the way, young Ugandans watch, any discharge of firearms by security services outside areas of operation in terms of war will have to be investigated. So you just do not, guys, you just do not discharge firearms because you're going to do it. You don't. In my visit to police headquarters in the last 2-3 years, I raised this matter, Sarah. The police's role in terms of law enforcement is through intelligence gathering. So quite clearly, if it's something as serious as this, what kind of background check had these guys done? Number two, if indeed they went on for this operation, up to 6 people. We now have, it's been established, none of the 6 were armed. Now, regardless of whatever is the case, what I would like to be hearing, Simon, from your government, is that these people who shot these people should be held directly accountable and responsible, and they should be tried. I only wish they could be tried in the military court tribunal. You know, it is wrong that they did it like that. And in any case, even if they were actually terrorists, there's a commonsensical element in it as your security person. I'm not. You know, you want the suspect alive. You want to possibly break their leg, you know, because you want them to provide evidence and perhaps expose the other. So, the mini conclusion I have is that these people being executed, maybe the public are being told that is, you know, it's, you know, armed thieves and things like that. Maybe these are targets in political operations, political security operations that we do not know, you know, that more than meets the eye. Maybe these are particular individuals from certain aspects of our community that the establishment want to get rid of. And, you know, for me, I demand, Judith, that the country ought to be explained to who the 6 people were, what the circumstances were leading to the massacre, and what intelligence the police actually did have, you know, that led to this operation to have been carried out.
Thank you.
And other than, beyond that, you know, this is a continuation of impunity. And this proliferation of arms, Simon, where in my country, 40 years after NRA, you know, even a supermarket must have 5 armed people armed. And these guys boast about law and order, security, peace and security, peace and security. What is it that has actually gone wrong? But whatever the case, no. I think the world is talking about environment issues, but one of the things the world is talking about is disarmament. And you yourself talked about this thing about creating, dealing with the proliferation of arms. So these things, if we don't deal with it, it may deal with us at some stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. And lastly, Counsel Byamugisha.
It is important for government and for the state to protect citizens, their lives and property against crime. It's a mandate under the Constitution. I want to first categorically make it clear that Ugandans are not questioning and are not saying security should not prevent crime. That's not in debate. Rather, what is in debate is whether the state is moving within the law in its pursuit to prevent and protect Ugandans and their lives. You know, colleagues and viewers, we usually look at the Democratic Republic of Congo as more or less as a failing state for its center's failure to hold in many aspects, including the issues of security. About a few days ago, about 170 young people were executed in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the northern province of Ngenga. These 170 youth were basically urban bandits, armed with machetes and what have you, bandits. Also moving on motorcycles, causing mayhem in the city. They were not rebels. Forget about the rebels in the eastern DRC. No, we are talking about young people operating within Kinshasa city, but causing mayhem, like what we usually see here. But failed as we may want to look at it, when the DRC authorities arrested these people, they were taken through trial. They arrested them. Most of them were arrested in operations, like one would want to say, caught red-handed. But when they caught them in the Kinshasa, causing mayhem with their tools and their arms, they were taken through trial. Majority of them have been under detention in Ndoro military prison. Only about 16 days ago, we are transferred. The first group, they first transferred 102 and eventually took 70 to the northern province, particularly for execution because they were found guilty, and the law was clear. Without wanting to go through the debate of whether the trial, how was it, but at least Congo, in its failed state, it took them through trial. Even when it took them through due process. Even when they were transferring them to a place where they want to execute them, it was a very transparent process. Even families were involved, families of those people. What gives the Ugandan state functionaries the audacity that you are going to suspect Byamugisha Moses, investigate him, follow him, find him on what you call a scene of crime? And I like the example that Comrade Sarah is highlighting. Testimonies were given. Someone is found on a border. He is not armed, perhaps has even surrendered. You tell him, okay, now lie down. He lies down flat like an empty envelope. You pull down a pistol, shoot in the head.
Another soldier, that one of them was shot by 2 soldiers, 2 policemen.
Yes.
Shooting to kill, not to just disable.
So, yes, and yet it should have been disabled because the lot. If those guys were also armed with whatever weapon, and they were now coming for the security agencies, the law allows them to disable the threat. So I basically join Ugandans to say no, this is not how it should have been. It should be investigated, it should be condemned. Because if that's not the case, in such a scenario, if a one Sarah Bireete was coming from Acacia Mall to pick ice cream for her daughter, and they say, oh, by the way, there's also a Sarah there. They could have been, she could have been finished. So these questions must be raised and they need answers, and security must not go on just like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to respond?
Just 1 minute.
Then you also give us your conclusion so that we just move like that.
I think I want to agree with you largely that the police should do, in execution of their work, follow the established procedures as much as possible. But I also want to hastily add that it is common for civilians, especially those who watch movies, to build very easily the James Bond scenarios and begin using that as a standard to place on security operations. The circumstances that occur can be so varied and very different that the judgment of the commander of the squad has to exercise serious imagination, serious digestion of the issue to determine the course of action. So many times when we see the end state, we do not perhaps have the privilege to see the cause of the activity, to be able to lay blame properly. But as I said, it is very important that, as it has been discussed, one, that there is adequate information, two, that the information is confirmed, that intelligence information is confirmed, that these are the people, and also the level of the threat to be to deserve the proportional use of force that can be utilized. If the way the picture has been painted, that people, because somebody be on the border is not enough to say somebody is innocent. Could be on the border when actually is the one who is providing cover.
He was trying to flee.
Whatever it is. So it's not enough to say because he was on the border, therefore was innocent.
And we are not
It
saying he
depends-
was innocent. We are saying he
depends
could have
on
been
them.
one of them.
Yes.
But the fact that he's just there, so I'm disturbing.
Yes. So to me, I
Which is
think
not-
that it depends on the explanation to be given by the police. Finally, I am happy that we've spoken a number of things. And to me, the country is having some sectors are having a lot of heated struggles out of political ambitions, disorganization, and mismanagement. Because once, as an organization is established, you're supposed to manage your affairs in accordance with established law, and also, if it is not law, manners, just cultural manners. And if people go out of them, then it is very, very unfortunate. So thank you for praising us on this matter today. And I think the blame game should be blame the cause. Don't just look at those who are custodians generally, but blame those who cause the problems before you blame the government as a whole.
Dr. Sarah, please.
I think just a statement that Honorable Mulongo has concluded on is a demonstration of failure as the party in power, and he's trying to find excuse, saying we should push the blame button of a failed leadership to citizens. It cannot be.
It's not just citizens.
It cannot be. Once you assume a position of power, whether voted or rigged, I know that there is contestation even about that. Once you assume a position of power, once you assume power to control,
it was settled in courts of
control our arms, because these arms belong to citizens, but the government controls them. Once you assume this power to expend taxpayers' money, including gifts and whatever you do, and the corruption, as like documented by Auditor General in the report released the other day. So once you assume this power comes with responsibility. Responsibility to keep law and order, responsibility to protect citizens and their property, and you cannot push on this responsibility to the people. So what we have discussed today, the three topics, are a demonstration of a crisis of governance in this country, a demonstration of failing institutions in this country, and failing institutions cannot fail in the middle. This weakness is coming from the top, and the button is with you citizens. Whether you need a better country, whether you deserve better, go out and register to vote, and maybe you could find that you deserve better.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Joseph?
From the manner in which Ssegirinya death can be traced back to the state, and yet it is the state that eventually ends with a massive failure to create an enabling environment in which he gets a decent send-off. To Kizza Besigye, an old pal of Mr. Museveni, treated like a chicken thief, to the young lawyer that this program has hosted, Aaron Kizza, effectively assaulted before being whisked off to be locked up on trumped up charges by a military court that should really not have jurisdiction in the first instance, to the execution of 6 suspects, if that is consoles anybody, 6 suspects in the streets of Kampala in 2025. I did not expect I would see that. I really hope that this conversation as we begin the new year is a conversation that helps the guys in charge to examine their conscience, and if they're not telling lies over Christmas, including those ones who claim Holy Communion, that they were genuinely serious, that this country needs a new direction, and I hope that that new direction we get sooner, with or without X, meaning treats.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And lastly, Counsel Moses, your parting shots.
It's been a great pleasure being part of this show, appearing with my very good friends, some of whom I had not seen in a very big while. I was a staff at Parliament in 2013 and 2016, early 16. And I had the pleasure to interact with the good works of the Honorable Simon. And I feel so bad that Uganda's system and how we vote and how, I hope that we can still utilize him as a country more than we do. Thank you, Civic Space TV, for his bringing such guys.
So he needs to be invited.
But also finally, back at the court martial, now that Freeman insists that the trial must go on, we are in the kitchen cooking, putting our pieces together. We will not abandon Dr. Besigye to just appear and be condemned without a fight. We will continue to expose the state and the government and their funny actions. I have hope in my heart that one afternoon Dr. Besigye will walk free out of that jail, and you will meet me on Kampala Road walking and dancing Chinaworo.
Wow.
Thank you very much to all of you, Ambassador Simon Mulongo, Dr. Sarah Bireete, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, and to you, Counsel Moses Byamugisha, for making time and being a part of this discussion on the chaotic send-off of Honorable Ssegirinya, and also the latest twist in the Besigye and Lutale case, as well as the recent shooting to death of 6 people by the police just here at Acacia Mall. Thank you very much. My name is Judith Atim. It's been a pleasure having this discussion, moderating it. And to you watching us, we do appreciate you for taking time. And also drop us a comment on in the comment section on this YouTube channel. Share your thoughts with us. And we'll be back next week, same time. For now, it is bye-bye.